those clever companies with their high-priced accountants, slick attorneys, they'll find a way not to pay. And so I think the focus needs to be, we need to continue to figure out how to reduce wasteful government spending. But before we talk about raising tax rates, we need to talk about making certain that every individual, every high net worth individual from Bucks County, every large corporation pays their fair share first, rather than increase the rate so that the people who play by the rules pay higher taxes and the big boys still pay nothing. And so that's why I think we need to focus on real tax reform. Now, what I happen to think is for the small business person that pays their fair share, that plays by the rules and does everything they can, signing the personal guarantees, signing the mortgage on their house to create an enterprise to put people back to work, what they would really benefit by, certainly not a higher rate, not necessarily even a lower rate, but a fairer, flatter tax with a simplified tax code so they don't need to, as I said, hire accountants and hire personnel to comply. Hire personnel and purchase equipment to produce. That's what's going to grow the economy. So I think you're going to hear, now that we've dealt with the national debt ceiling issue, I think you're going to hear an awful lot about tax rates, and hopefully find something to say about a whole lot about tax reform.
Thank you. And as a small business owner who writes those huge quarterly checks, we'd love to see something, and I think equality would be the issue, not my saying I don't want to pay. And several of the issues you talked about in answering were other parts of questions that we had. We passed the stimulus, unemployment soars. We passed health care reform, insurance premiums soar. We raised the debt ceiling, the stock market crashes, and obliterated the issue of unemployment. Why doesn't anything actually work? How much time do we have for that?
I'll tell you what does work. What does work is the American people. What does work is free enterprise. What does work are market-based reforms that put individuals and small businesses back in control of the economy, and withdraws the idea that bigger government with higher taxes and more government spending can solve our nation's issues. The presumption, the assumptions of your question, the idea that we can spend what was supposed to be $787 billion, adopted in 2009, on a stimulus program with the promise that unemployment would not exceed 8%. Unemployment's never been under 8% since then. The idea that we can take $500 billion, $550 billion out of an already strict Medicare program to begin providing a new benefit for a generation who would not yet earned it, and tell this small business person in this country that that is going to save money. I was at this percolator meeting, it was a year or two ago, and that was the big issue. And I sat in the back of the room and listened to small business after small business take this microphone and say, please don't do that to us, that will raise our insurance rates. And it has. So I think the idea that the federal government can be the solution to all the nation's problems, the federal government has a role to play, an important role to play. To care for those who truly, as Abraham Lincoln says, to care for those who cannot care for themselves. Not to provide programs for all those who are capable of caring for themselves. And so, if you're looking to Washington to solve the problems, I think we're probably looking in the wrong direction. Look back home. Look on the small business on Main Street. Look at the individual community, the families of Bucks County that do balance their budgets, that only spend to their paycheck and don't spend beyond. That's why we need a balanced budget. As I said in my remarks, your families do it, your businesses do it, our county government does it, our school district does it, our state does it. And we're still operational. They don't have a $14 trillion, almost $15 trillion national debt. We do. We need to stop spending with money we don't have.
Thank you. Geithner said, no way our nation's credit will be damaged. Now that it has been downgraded, what's Congress doing to restore our AAA rating?
Well, I think you can read the report that S&P wrote in April of last year. It said, get the country's fiscal house in order. I believe had the Senate adopted cut capital balance, the bill that passed the House, and had been signed by the president, I believe we could have avoided that difficult downgrade. That bill was full of tough decisions. The tough decisions, as I said in my remarks, that Greece and some of the other European countries are currently trying to avoid. They're actually now having kicked the can down the road much further than the United States government. They're dealing with amendments to their programs, with reforms that are much more painful than they had to do. That bill cut cap and balance and passed the House overwhelmingly. It had support of Republicans and Democrats. It did get to the United States Senate, and Harry Reid, as I said in my remarks, the Senate failed to act. The President failed to lead. The Senate refused to even have a vote on that bill. Had it been brought up for a vote, I believe it would have had immediately 47 votes. You only need 51 to have it adopted. So we were, with cut cap and balance, passed the House, 4 votes away from approval in the Senate. Had it been adopted, we'd be AAA with Moody's, Fitch, and Standard & Poor's. That's what we need to do.
What is being done in Congress to spur growth for infrastructure, clean energy, and transportation jobs?
Well, those are important projects. Those are all infrastructure projects that were promised as part of President Obama's stimulus program. You may recall the term shovel-ready projects. I'm going to look at Bill Rickett as I'm talking about transportation.
This wasn't Bill's question, I'll say.
I'm not blaming you for the question. It's a good question, but you could have asked me, right? And President Obama, during the 2010 State of the Nation, you probably, if you watched it as I did, you probably remember one of the more memorable lines. He was talking about the stimulus program and how unemployment would not go up. But more importantly, how you, the American people, could be assured that your money would be spent wisely on projects that he was referring to as shovel-ready projects. To me, that meant bridges, roads, water and sewer treatment plants, things that we could touch and feel and drive over and use for the next 50 years. We would typically advertise over 50 years because we'll be paying back that money over a long period of time. And the line was, and the Vice President, Joe Biden, was behind him. He said, Vice President's going to be in charge of making sure your money's wisely spent. And he said, and nobody messes with Joe. I don't know if you remember that line. Everybody laughed. Well, we now know that less than, first of all, about $850 billion, it wasn't $787 billion, over $800 billion was spent. Less than 6% on transportation, construction, infrastructure. The rest of the money evaporated into sort of government programs and bureaucracy. So it looks to me like somebody messed with Joe. So the question becomes, Francine, what do we do now? I mean, you've got to go back to the American people and say, stimulus money's gone, but now we're really going to do a program to invest in infrastructure. And I'm co-sponsor of probably one of the only bipartisan infrastructure investment pieces of legislation in the House of Representatives with a fellow named Tim Murphy from Western Pennsylvania. And it proposes to authorize leases on outer continental shelf drilling for oil and natural gas to help solve the energy issue that we have in this country, and take the revenues, so not taxing the American people, taking the revenues from those leases and pouring it directly into mainly transportation infrastructure, railroads, bridges in this country, and a pretty good portion toward environmental restoration projects, wetlands restoration. And so it's good for the environment, it'll be good for transportation infrastructure, it'll be good for energy, and most importantly, it'll put people to work, which is what the stimulus program is supposed to do, but never did.
I think many of us in this room liked it when you said bipartisan amendment, or, you know, it's just some of the frustration that we've all had sitting here watching what goes on and has been going on, not just since you've been elected, but the Congress before that as well. Why is Social Security always referenced as an entitlement program when you had to pay and work your life to qualify?
I think in my remarks I referred to it as a mandatory spending program, because it's one of the programs which are based upon a certain age. You become a certain age in this country, and you work a certain number of quarters. The federal government is required by legislation to appropriate and spend on it. So I call it a mandatory spending program. That's how I refer to it. I can't speak for the other members of Congress.
Thank you. Warren Warren Buffett, Gene Epstein, and hundreds of wealthy Americans have volunteered or requested that their tax rates be increased to help their country. How can Congress and elected officials conscientiously ignore their request to the detriment of lower income citizens? I know we already touched on taxing relevant to small businesses, but this is for everybody.
To the deficit of, what was the second
To
part?
the detriment of lower income citizens.
To the detriment of lower income citizens. Well, first of all, there's probably a P.O. box somewhere down in Washington, and I'll give a self-addressed stamped envelope to anybody that wants to pay more taxes than you're currently paying the federal government. There's a way actually to do that. I have actually, some of my staff in Washington have written checks and mailed it in. You have the right to do that. There are others, who talk about paying higher taxes, that likely, have estate planning, estate plans in place to avoid paying things like estate tax, inheritance tax, and along those lines. Again, I said it a number of times during this Q&A and during my remarks. I think first we have to get after the individuals that don't pay any tax. Rather than raise rates, I think the first step is cut back on wasteful spending and make certain everybody pays their fair share. And in my view, you could actually reduce the corporate tax from 35%, which is the highest rate in the world, to 25%. If you eliminate the loopholes and deductions, you would broaden the base of taxpayers, lower the rate, broaden the base of taxpayers, and increase revenue to the federal government. I think that's a more prudent approach than to sort of ignore an already too complex tax code that permits too many people not to pay.
Do you see, when you talk about eliminating loopholes, do you see any future for possibly eliminating some of the pork barrel legislation that we keep hearing isn't going to happen and it happens?
One of the first votes that I cast on your behalf, and let me just address something Francine said earlier about the importance of bipartisanship. Each of you understand the need to respect those with views that are different than your own. And your businesses get along with those who may have a different approach and actually accomplish something. I try to bring that Bucks County wisdom and common sense to the United States Congress. One of the members of Congress as likely to vote with the other party as with his or her own party. There's a survey that comes out once a year in Congressional Quarterly that lists the most independent members of Congress. I think you know I'm a registered Republican, but I'm indicated in the report as one of the most independent to reach across the aisle to find a good solution. And so I'm going to continue to pursue that.
Thank you. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for their questions and thank you for your patience in answering them.
Thank you, Francine. And any of the questions that haven't been answered, we'll get answers and we'll get them to Clark so we can distribute them. Thanks for that. I appreciate it.